You're watching ReeTV Headlines. What is ReeTV Headlines? It's where we take a look at the headlines in the mainstream media, of course. Duh! If you're new here, take a look at some of my playlists. Check out the JonBenet Ramsey series I've created, 7 episodes so far. If you haven't already, check out the Crocodile Tears series, and don't forget the exclusive content, True Crime Forum and JonBenet Ramsey Case Archive on my website. So a couple of weeks ago, a viewer, Liz Cawthorne, suggested the Japanese Twitter killer for a ReeTV Headlines episode. But since then, I've had to produce 2 hours of exclusive content for Christmas and New Year, so I didn't get around to this until now. So thanks for the suggestion, Liz. For the last few episodes, I had taken a look at 2 articles, but by reading 2 articles, I was repeating myself quite a bit. So this time, I'm looking at 2 articles, but I'm not reading those articles verbatim. I will take out some of the duplicate information. And if you want to know which articles I'm referring to, you can find the links in the description. Anyway, let's have a gander at these articles. The headlines for each of the 2 articles that we'll be looking at: Japanese serial killer used Twitter to lure his victims, and Japan Twitter killer Takehiro Shiraishi sentenced to death. A man who murdered 9 people after contacting them on Twitter has been sentenced to death in a high-profile case that has shocked Japan. Takehiro Shiraishi, dubbed the Twitter killer, who from now on I shall refer to him as JTK, how original, because I don't know the correct pronunciation of his name, and people tend to get weird about that shit. Anyway, JTK was arrested in 2017 after body parts were found in his flat. The 30-year-old, okay, in one article he's 30, in the other he's 27, but anyway, the 30-year-old had admitted to murdering and dismembering his victims, almost all of whom were young women he had met on the social media platform. JTK has reportedly admitting hacking the flesh off of the bodies and throwing it out with the trash, then sprinkling cat litter over the remains to cover up the evidence. In all, some 240 pieces of bone belonging to 9 people, including heads and limbs, were discovered inside coolers and toolboxes at his apartment. The serial killings triggered debate over how suicide is discussed online. The grisly case has stunned Japan, which has an extremely low crime rate, and pictures of the nondescript house in a quiet residential area were splashed across the front pages of the country's newspapers. The suspect used to work as a part-time scout in a prostitution ring, reported local media. He was arrested in February for being involved in organised crimes but was given a suspended prison term. In June, JTK told his father, "There is no meaning in life, and I do not know what I'm living for." Details have emerged as to how investigators tracked down the suspected killer and trapped him using the same medium, Twitter, he used himself to lure his victims. He has reportedly told police that 4 of his victims were teenagers, 4 others were aged around 20, and the other was in her late 20s. There were 8 female victims and 1 male. He contacted his prey via Twitter and killed most of them on the day he met them. More than 400 people turned up to watch the live verdict, despite the court only having 6 seats available for the public. Public support for the death penalty remains high in Japan, one of the few developed nations to retain capital punishment. How did he find his victims? JTK used Twitter to lure suicidal women to his home, saying he could help them die, and in some cases claimed he would kill himself alongside them. He strangled and dismembered 8 women and 1 man, aged 15 to 26, between August and October 2017. The serial killings first came to light on Halloween that year when police found dismembered body parts in his flat near Tokyo while they were searching for a missing 23-year-old woman who turned out to be one of his victims. After she had gone missing, her brother accessed her Twitter account and alerted police to a suspicious handle, leading them to JTK's residence on the morning of the 31st of October 2017. One female follower told her brother that she recognized the handle. The brother then asked her to contact the person, while he also reported the case to the police. The woman then convinced JTK to go to a train station from where investigators followed him to his house. Immediately after he returned to his apartment, police knocked on the door and found a white bag belonging to the missing sister. When investigators asked the whereabouts of the sister, JTK said, "Inside the cooler," pointing at it. He moved into the flat in a suburb of Tokyo on the 22nd of August and contacted victims by tweeting that he would help their suicide plans. He told police he killed his first victim, a female acquaintance, soon after moving there, and spent 3 days dismembering her body. He then killed her boyfriend, who asked about his missing girlfriend, police sources said. Police, for now, believe JTK acted alone, but his motives remain unclear, and investigators are questioning whether it is possible to kill a person nearly every week without neighbours hearing screams. Neighbours have since reported noticing a foul smell coming from the flat. JTK told investigators that he kept the body parts because he was afraid he might get caught if he discarded them. Japanese media called it the House of Horrors, after investigators discovered 9 heads, along with a large number of arm and leg bones stashed in coolers and toolboxes. What happened at the trial? While prosecutors sought the death penalty for JTK, his lawyers argued he was guilty of the lesser charge of murder with consent, claiming his victims had given their permission to be killed. He later disputed his own defense team's version of events and said he killed without their consent. The judge who delivered the verdict called the crimes cunning and cruel and found the defendant fully responsible for his actions. He also said none of the 9 victims consented to be killed, including silent consent. JTK told the court last month that he did not plan to appeal against his sentence if found guilty. It was not immediately clear if that remained his plan. The death penalty is carried out by hanging in Japan, which has more than 100 prisoners on death row. Death row inmates are not told when they will be put to death until the day of their execution. Years usually pass between sentencing and an execution being carried out. So who were the victims? The names of those JTK murdered were withheld to protect their privacy. The father of one victim, aged 25, told the court last month that he would never forgive JTK, even if he dies. "Even now, when I see a woman of my daughter's age, I mistake her for my daughter. This pain will never go away. Give her back to me," he said. The father of another victim said the death sentence was appropriate. "I feel like I want to get revenge, but bereaved families can't do anything. I don't know how to vent my anger," he said. The man JTK killed was a friend of one of his female victims who was seeking her whereabouts. What impact has the case had? The killings stunned Japan, triggering fresh debate about suicide and how to help those considering it, as well as about websites where suicide is discussed. The government has indicated it may introduce new regulations. Summing up, the judge said the case had provoked great anxiety in society because social networks are so commonly used. These murders also prompted a change by Twitter, which amended its rules to state users should not promote or encourage suicide or self-harm. Twitter's chief actor, Jack Dorsey, called the case extremely sad. Japan has long battled one of the highest suicide rates in the industrialized world. Figures have dropped since preventative measures were introduced more than a decade ago, but there have been signs that rates have been rising again during this world hoax. Thanks for watching. If you got this far, I actually love you. If you enjoyed the content, give it a thumbs up. If you want to support this channel, smash that subscribe button now. What are you waiting for? A massive thank you to the people who have kindly supported my channel, the official ReeTV supporters who sponsor this content. You guys are awesome. Peace. You've been watching ReeTV Headlines.